The rain was coming down hard that night in Seattle. Robert Hayes stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Grand Emerald Hotel ballroom, watching the drops race down the glass. He'd been standing there for almost 10 minutes trying to convince himself that coming to this charity event was a good idea. 3 years. It had been 3 years since the accident. 3 years since the phone call that shattered his world into a million pieces. 3 years since he lost Diana. Mr. Hayes, we're about to start the silent auction, his assistant said softly, appearing at his elbow. Jennifer knew better than most how difficult these events were for him. She'd been there through it all. The funeral arrangements, the sleepless nights at the office, the slow crawl back to something resembling a normal life. Robert nodded and straightened his tie. He was here for a reason. The Hayes Foundation supported programs for underprivileged kids, giving them opportunities in tech and education. Diana would have wanted him to be here. She always said that their money meant nothing if they didn't use it to help others. The ballroom was packed with Seattle's elite, tech executives, old money families, philanthropists with more zeros in their bank accounts than most people could imagine. Robert made his way through the crowd, shaking hands and making small talk that felt hollow in his chest. Everyone knew his story. Everyone gave him those sympathetic looks that made him want to disappear. "Robert, so good to see you," called out Patricia Morrison, a real estate developer he'd known for years. "How's business?" "Good, Patricia. Can't complain. And your daughter? How's she doing?" Robert's expression softened slightly. "Claire's doing well. She's a junior now, thinking about studying engineering. Diana would be so proud." There it was, the reminder, as if he needed one. Robert excused himself and moved toward the auction tables, pretending to be interested in a weekend getaway package to the San Juan Islands. The event had about 50 volunteers, mostly college students from the local university. They were the ones checking people in, managing the auction items and serving drinks. Robert appreciated them being there. They reminded him that there were still young people who cared about making a difference. He was looking at a signed basketball when he felt it, that prickle on the back of his neck that told him someone was watching him. Robert glanced up and saw a young woman standing about 20 feet away, staring at him with wide eyes. She was holding a tray of champagne glasses, but her hands were shaking so badly that the glasses were starting to tilt. The girl looked to be about 19 or 20, with dark skin and her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She was wearing the volunteer uniform, a simple black dress with a name tag that read Destiny. But what caught Robert's attention was the way she was looking at him. Not with sympathy or curiosity, but with something that looked almost like fear mixed with desperate urgency. Their eyes met, and she quickly looked away, nearly dropping the tray. She set it down on a nearby table and pulled out her phone, staring at the screen, then back at Robert, then at the screen again. Her whole body was tense, like she was trying to decide whether to run or stay. Robert frowned. Was something wrong? Did she need help? Before he could move toward her, she made the decision for him. She walked quickly across the ballroom floor, weaving between clusters of people in expensive suits and designer dresses. When she reached him, she was breathing hard. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I know this is weird and you probably think I'm crazy, but I need to talk to you." "It's important," Robert studied her face. She didn't look crazy. She looked terrified. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but..." She glanced around nervously. "Can we talk somewhere private?" "Please, it's about your wife." The world seemed to stop. Robert felt his heart slam against his ribs. "My wife?" His voice came out harder than he intended. "What about my wife?" Destiny's eyes filled with tears. "I know this sounds insane. I know you probably get weirdos all the time trying to tell you things, but please just listen to me for 2 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Robert's security guard, Tony, had noticed the interaction and was making his way over. Robert held up a hand to stop him. 2 minutes, he said to Destiny. "But this better not be some kind of scam." "It's not, I swear." She looked around again and spotted a quiet corner near the coat check, away from the main crowd. They walked over and Robert's jaw was clenched so tight it hurt. Once they were relatively alone, Destiny pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. 6 months ago, my grandmother got really sick. She lives in New York, but I'm from a small village in Tanzania originally. That's where most of my family still is. My grandmother went back there to be treated by traditional healers and at this small medical clinic near where she grew up. Robert's patience was running thin. What does this have to do with— Please, just let me finish. Destiny's voice cracked. My cousin sent me photos from the clinic. Just random pictures to show me how Grandma was doing, you know? And in one of the pictures, there's a woman in the background. A doctor or a nurse, I think. My cousin said she was American, working as a volunteer. She turned the phone toward Robert, and he found himself looking at a blurry photo of an elderly woman lying in a bed, smiling. But Robert wasn't looking at the elderly woman. His eyes were locked on the figure standing in the background, partially turned away from the camera. The woman had reddish-brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was wearing scrubs and holding a medical chart. Most of her face was hidden, but there was something about her posture, the way she held herself, that made Robert's breath catch in his throat. That could be anyone, he said, but his voice sounded strange even to his own ears. Look at her arm, Destiny said, zooming in on the photo, right there on her left forearm. Robert squinted at the pixelated image. There, barely visible on the woman's arm, was what looked like a birthmark, a port wine stain in the shape of South America. Diana had a birthmark exactly like that, on her left forearm. In the exact same spot, Robert's hands started shaking. When was this taken? 6 months ago, December. That's impossible. My wife died 3 years ago. There was an accident in Kenya. The car went off a cliff and caught fire. They couldn't recover. He couldn't finish the sentence. He'd said these words so many times to so many people, but now they felt like lies in his mouth. I know what the report said, Destiny said gently. I looked you up after I saw this photo. I read everything about the accident. But Mr. Hayes, my cousin, said this woman's name was Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She said she'd been working at the clinic for almost 2 years. She spoke English with an American accent. And she had that birthmark. Robert felt like he was going to be sick. This couldn't be real. Diana was dead. He'd mourned her. He'd buried an empty casket because there was nothing left to bury. Claire had cried herself to sleep for months. They'd been to therapy. They'd slowly, painfully, learned to live with the hole in their lives. Why are you telling me this? He asked, his voice rough. Why now? Because I couldn't stop thinking about it. I showed the picture to my mom, and she said I should mind my own business. But Mr. Hayes, if there's even a chance, if your wife is alive somewhere, don't you deserve to know? Robert's mind was racing. Could it be possible? Could Diana be alive? But why would she fake her death? Why would she leave him and Claire? It didn't make sense. Diana loved them. She would never do something like that unless she had to. Do you have more photos? He asked. Destiny shook her head. Just this one. But I have the name of the clinic and the village. My cousin said Dr. Mitchell left about 3 months ago. She didn't say where she was going. Robert pulled out his own phone. Send me that photo. And send me everything you know about the clinic. The name, the location, anything. Of course. Destiny quickly sent the information to his number. Mr. Hayes, I really hope I'm right. I hope she's alive. But if I'm wrong, I'm so sorry for putting you through this. Robert looked at this young woman who had just turned his entire world upside down, and he saw nothing but genuine concern in her eyes. If you're right, he said slowly, you've just given me the greatest gift anyone could give. If you're wrong. He couldn't finish that thought either. Destiny reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. My cousin wrote down the GPS coordinates of the clinic, just in case. I know it sounds paranoid, but she said there aren't a lot of street addresses out there. Robert took the paper like it was made of gold. His hands were still shaking. I have to go, Destiny said. My shift is over, and I don't want to cause you any more trouble. But Mr. Hayes? I'll be praying it's her. Before he could thank her or ask her anything else, Destiny disappeared back into the crowd of people. Robert stood there, clutching his phone and the piece of paper, feeling like he was in a dream, or a nightmare. Tony appeared at his side. Everything okay, boss? Robert looked at his security guard, a man who'd been with him for 10 years, who'd stood beside him at Diana's funeral. I need you to call Jackson, he said, referring to his head of security and private investigator. Tell him to meet me at the house in an hour. And Tony, this is urgent. Top priority. Drop everything else and what's going on. Robert showed him the photo. I need to know if my wife is still alive. The drive home was a blur. Robert sat in the back of his town car, staring at the photo on his phone, zooming in and out, looking at every detail. The birthmark was right. The height looked right. Even the way the woman stood with her weight slightly more on her left leg because of an old knee injury. Diana used to stand exactly like that. But it had been 3 years. 3 years of believing she was gone. 3 years of grief and therapy and slowly rebuilding a life without her. Could he really go through all of that again if this turned out to be nothing? Could he afford not to find out if it was something? When he got home, the house was dark except for Claire's bedroom light. His daughter was probably studying or talking to friends online. Robert stood in the foyer for a moment, looking up at that light. If Diana was alive, what would he tell Claire? How would he explain that her mother had been alive all this time? And if Diana was alive, why hadn't she come home? That was the question that scared him most, because there were only a few possible answers and none of them were good. Either Diana chose to leave them, or someone forced her to. Either way, his whole understanding of his life, his marriage, everything he thought he knew was about to be shattered. Jackson arrived 30 minutes later. He was a former FBI agent, mid-50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Robert had hired him 5 years ago and trusted him completely. They sat in Robert's study and Robert told him everything. About the girl at the charity event. About the photo. About the birthmark and the clinic in Tanzania. Jackson listened without interrupting, which was one of the things Robert appreciated about him. When Robert finished, Jackson held out his hand for the phone. He studied the photo for a long time, zooming in just like Robert had done. "The birthmark is distinctive," Jackson said finally, "but this photo quality is terrible. I can't say for certain that this is Diana just from this. So what do we do?" Jackson set the phone down and looked Robert straight in the eye. "We investigate, quietly, carefully. I'll start with the accident report from Kenya. I'll see if there are any holes, any inconsistencies. Then I'll send someone to Tanzania to check out this clinic, see if we can track down this Dr. Mitchell person." "I want to go," Robert said immediately. "No." Jackson's voice was firm. "Not yet. If Diana's alive and she's hiding, there's a reason. We need to figure out what that reason is before you go charging in. If someone forced her to disappear, showing up might put her in danger. Or you." Robert hadn't thought of that. The idea that Diana might be in danger, that someone might be threatening her, made his blood run cold. "How long will this take?" "Give me 72 hours to do the initial investigation. If I find anything concrete, anything that suggests this is really her, then we'll talk about next steps." Robert nodded. 72 hours. 3 days. He'd waited 3 years thinking Diana was dead. He could wait 3 more days to find out if she was alive. But as Jackson left and Robert sat alone in his study, staring at that blurry photo, he knew that these would be the longest 3 days of his life. Somewhere in the world, there might be a woman with Diana's birthmark, Diana's hair, Diana's posture, a woman who for some reason was living under a different name in a small village in Tanzania, instead of being home with her family. And Robert Hayes was going to find out why. Robert didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that blurry photo. Every time he started to drift off, his mind would jolt awake with a new question, a new possibility, a new fear. At 4 in the morning, he gave up and went downstairs to his office. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old wood settling. He made coffee and sat at his desk, pulling up everything he could find about the accident that supposedly killed his wife. He'd read these reports before, of course. Dozens of times in those first few months, trying to make sense of what happened. But now he was reading them with different eyes, looking for cracks, for things that didn't add up. Diana had been in Kenya working with a medical aid organization. She'd done trips like that before, 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there, using her skills as a doctor to help people who had nothing. Robert had always supported her work, even though he worried about her safety. The accident happened on her last day there. She was being driven back to Nairobi to catch her flight home. The vehicle went off the road on a mountain pass, tumbled down a steep embankment, and burst into flames. The driver died instantly. Diana's body was supposedly burned beyond recognition. Robert stared at the report from the Kenyan police. The officer who filed it was named Inspector Lawrence Kimani. Robert pulled up a search on his name. According to LinkedIn, Kimani had retired from the police force just 8 months after Diana's accident. He now lived in a nice neighborhood in Nairobi, and according to his social media, seemed to be living pretty well for a retired police officer. That was interesting. Robert kept digging. The towing company that supposedly removed the wreckage was called Baraka Recovery Services. He searched for it. Nothing. No website, no listings, no business registration he could find. It was like the company didn't exist. His coffee had gone cold, but Robert didn't notice. He was deep into it now, following thread after thread. The hospital that provided the dental records to confirm Diana's identity, St. Catherine's Medical Center in Nairobi. He found their website easily enough, but when he looked up the forensic dental specialist who had supposedly done the comparison, Dr. Peter Wambua, he hit a wall. No practice, no contact information, nothing after 2022. The man had vanished. Robert's hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from grief. It was from anger. Someone had lied to him. Someone had faked his wife's death and let him suffer for 3 years. Let his daughter cry herself to sleep. Let them both learn to live with a hole in their lives that could never be filled. When Jackson called at 8 that morning, Robert had a list of 15 different inconsistencies in the accident report. "You've been busy," Jackson said after Robert rattled them off. "Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me you see it too." "I see it," Jackson confirmed. "I had my team working through the night. The Kenyan police officer who filed the report, Kimani, he deposited $50,000 into his bank account 2 weeks after the accident. The deposit came from an offshore account that we're still trying to trace." Robert felt his stomach drop. Someone paid him off. Looks that way. And it gets better. I tracked down the aid organization Diana was working with, Hope Medical International. They confirmed she was there, but here's the thing. According to their records, Diana left the compound 3 days before the accident. She told them she needed personal time and would make her own way to Nairobi. 3 days. Where was she for 3 days? That's what we need to find out. But Robert, if Diana left on her own and disappeared 3 days before the supposed accident, then she knew something was coming. She was running from something. Robert stood up and walked to the window. The sun was coming up over Lake Washington, painting the water gold and pink. It looked like a normal morning. It looked like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. "What about the clinic in Tanzania?" he asked. "I've got someone on the ground there now. Former CIA, speaks Swahili. Knows how to ask questions without raising alarms. She'll check out the clinic, ask about this Dr. Mitchell, and see if she can find any recent photos or information about where she went." "How long?" 24 hours, maybe less. But Robert, I need you to sit tight. Don't do anything. Don't tell anyone about this. Not yet. I have to tell Claire." There was a pause. "Are you sure that's a good idea? If this turns out to be nothing—" "It's not nothing," Robert interrupted. "You know it's not. Someone faked Diana's death. Whether or not she's in Tanzania right now, she didn't die in that accident. My daughter deserves to know." Jackson sighed. "You're right. But maybe wait until we have more information? Another day or two?" Robert thought about Claire upstairs, probably just waking up, getting ready for school. She had her mom's eyes and her stubborn streak. She'd been so strong through everything. But Robert knew she still cried sometimes when she thought no one could hear. He'd found her once, sitting in Diana's closet, holding one of her old sweaters. "I'll wait," he said finally. But not long. The next 24 hours were torture. Robert went through the motions of his day, conference calls, meetings, emails, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. He kept checking his phone every 5 minutes, waiting for an update from Jackson. That evening at dinner, Claire noticed something was off. "Dad, you okay? You've been weird all day." Robert looked at his daughter across the table. She was 16 now, tall and athletic, with Diana's intelligence and his stubborn determination. She was wearing her soccer team hoodie and had her hair pulled back in a messy bun. "Just work stuff," he said, which was technically true. Everything was work stuff when you ran a tech company. You always say that. Claire pushed her pasta around her plate. "Is it about the foundation event? Did something happen there?" Robert's heart skipped. "Why would you think that?" "Because you've been acting strange since then. And you never act strange. You're like annoyingly stable." She gave him a small smile. Robert forced himself to smile back. "Nothing happened, I promise. Just thinking about some business decisions." Claire studied him for a moment longer, then shrugged and went back to her food. But Robert could tell she didn't believe him. His daughter was too smart for her own good sometimes. That night, Jackson called with an update. My contact in Tanzania found the clinic. It's real, it's tiny, and yes, there was an American doctor working there named Dr. Mitchell. She left about 3 months ago, just like the girl told you. Robert's heart was pounding. Did they get a photo? Better. They got a description. Red-brown hair, about 5'7", scar on her right knee from an old injury, and, here's the kicker, a birthmark on her left arm that looks like a map. Diana had torn her ACL playing tennis in college. She'd had surgery and it left a scar. Robert used to trace that scar with his fingers when they lay in bed together. It's her, Robert said, his voice barely a whisper. Jackson, it's really her. I think you're right. But Robert, there's more. The clinic director said Dr. Mitchell was always looking over her shoulder. She never stayed in one place long. She'd work at the clinic for a few weeks, then disappear for a while, then come back. The director got the impression she was hiding from something. From what? That's the million-dollar question. I've been digging into your life, Diana's life, looking for anything that might explain this. And I found something interesting. About 4 months before Diana's supposed death, she opened a new bank account. Separate from your joint accounts, she deposited $20,000 into it over the course of 2 months in small increments. Robert frowned. 20,000? From where? From your joint account. Small withdrawals? Nothing that would raise flags. 1,000 here, 1,500 there. She was stockpiling cash. She was planning to disappear. Looks that way. But here's what doesn't make sense. If Diana wanted to leave you, why stage an elaborate accident? Why not just file for divorce? You're not the kind of man who would have made that difficult. So she wasn't running from you. Robert sat down heavily. Jackson was right. If Diana wanted out of their marriage, she could have just left. They would have figured out custody, split their assets, moved on. It would have hurt, but it would have been clean. So who was she running from? I'm working on that. But Robert, I need you to think. In the months before Diana left, did anything strange happen? Did she seem scared? Did she mention anything unusual? Robert closed his eyes, trying to remember. That time in his life felt like it happened to a different person, but slowly details started coming back. She was stressed, he said. I thought it was just work. She'd been doing a lot of research on pharmaceutical trials in Africa. She was worried about ethics violations, companies testing drugs on vulnerable populations. Did she say which companies? No, she just, wait. Robert's eyes snapped open. She had a fight with Vincent, my business partner. It was about a month before she left. I walked in on them in my home office, and they were arguing about something. When I asked what was wrong, Vincent said it was nothing, just a misunderstanding. Diana wouldn't talk about it. Jackson was quiet for a moment. Vincent Chen? Yeah. Why? Because Vincent Chen sits on the board of 3 pharmaceutical companies, and one of them, MediGlobal Solutions, was investigated 2 years ago for running unauthorized drug trials in Kenya. The investigation was dropped due to lack of evidence. Robert felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. You think Diana found something? You think she found proof? I think it's possible. And if she did, if she threatened to expose them. Jackson didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. They would have silenced her, Robert said quietly. They would have killed her. Or convinced her that they would kill her if she didn't disappear. It would explain everything, why she ran, why she faked her death, why she's been hiding for 3 years. Robert stood up and started pacing. His mind was racing. Vincent had been his friend for 15 years. They'd built the company together, been to each other's weddings, celebrated each other's successes. The idea that Vincent could be involved in something like this was almost impossible to believe. But almost wasn't the same as completely. Where's Vincent now? Robert asked. That's the other thing I need to tell you. Vincent died 8 months ago. Heart attack in his sleep. He was only 49. The room seemed to tilt. 8 months ago? Yeah. Sudden, unexpected, no prior health issues. The autopsy said it was a massive coronary event, but... Jackson paused. But there are drugs that can cause that. Untraceable if you know what you're doing. Robert sat back down. Vincent was dead. If he was involved in threatening Diana, in forcing her to disappear, Then he was gone. The threat was gone. Does Diana know? Robert asked. Does she know he's dead? If she's been hiding in remote villages in Africa for the past 3 years, probably not. She wouldn't risk accessing news from home. It would leave a digital trail. So she's still hiding from a ghost. It looks that way. Robert put his head in his hands. Diana had been living in fear for 3 years, running from a dead man. She'd given up her life, her family, her daughter, all to protect them from a threat that no longer existed. I need to find her, Robert said. I need to tell her it's safe to come home. My contact in Tanzania is tracking down where Dr. Mitchell went when she left the clinic. The trail is cold, but not dead. These small communities, people remember an American doctor. We'll find her. How long? A week, maybe 2. She's been moving around, never staying in one place too long. But we'll find her, Robert. I promise. After Jackson hung up, Robert sat in his office for a long time, just thinking. Diana was alive. After 3 years of grief, 3 years of believing she was gone, she was out there somewhere. Still breathing, still working, still being the person he fell in love with. But she was also scared and alone, living in hiding, thinking that coming home would put her family in danger. Robert pulled up a photo on his computer. It was from their 10th anniversary 5 years ago. They'd gone to Hawaii, just the 2 of them. Diana was laughing in the picture, her hair wild from the ocean wind, her eyes bright with joy. She looked so alive, so free. He wondered if she ever laughed like that anymore. The next morning, Robert made a decision. He called his lawyers and asked them to start a quiet investigation into Global Solutions and Vincent's involvement with the company. He wanted every piece of paper, every email, every financial transaction. If Diana had found evidence of illegal trials, that evidence was still out there somewhere. He also called his head of security and told him to arrange for private security for Claire. Nothing obvious, nothing that would scare her, just someone watching to make sure she was safe. If Vincent had partners, if there were other people involved in whatever Diana had uncovered, Robert wasn't taking any chances. Then he went upstairs to Claire's room. She was getting ready for school, music playing from her phone, textbooks scattered across her bed. Hey, kiddo, got a minute? Claire looked up, earbuds in, she pulled them out. What's up? Robert sat on the edge of her bed. He'd been planning what to say, but now that he was here, the words wouldn't come. Dad, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Robert said. At least I don't think so, but I need to tell you something, and I need you to promise you won't hate me. Claire's face went pale. Are you sick? No. No, nothing like that. Robert took a deep breath. It's about your mom. He watched his daughter's expression change from worry to confusion to something he couldn't quite read. What about Mom? Robert pulled out his phone and showed her the photo, the blurry image of the woman in the clinic in Tanzania. I think, he said slowly, there's a chance your mother might still be alive. Claire stared at the photo. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she looked up at her father, and Robert saw tears streaming down her face. Don't do this to me, she whispered. Dad, please don't do this to me. Claire, I wouldn't tell you if I wasn't sure. You can't be sure. It's a blurry picture of some random woman. Claire stood up, backing away from him. Mom is dead. We buried her. We said goodbye. You can't just come in here and tell me she might be alive because of some photo. It's not just the photo. There are inconsistencies in the accident report, evidence that someone faked her death. Stop it. Claire put her hands over her ears. I don't want to hear this. I can't hear this. Robert stood up, reaching for his daughter, but she pulled away. Claire, please. Get out. Just get out. Robert left the room, his heart breaking. He stood in the hallway, listening to his daughter cry, and wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. But she deserved to know. If Diana was alive, Claire deserved to know. He just hoped he could prove it before hope destroyed them both. 5 days after showing Claire the photo, Robert got the call he'd been waiting for. We found her, Jackson said. She's in Tanzania, about 40 miles from the Serengeti. Small village called Mwanza. She's working at a medical clinic there. Robert was in a meeting when the call came through, but he didn't care. He stood up, walked out of the conference room, and left his entire executive team sitting there confused. Are you absolutely sure it's her? My contact got within 20 feet of her yesterday, took photos. Robert, it's Diana. There's no doubt. Robert leaned against the wall in the hallway, his legs suddenly weak. For 5 days, he'd been living in this strange space between hope and terror. Claire wasn't speaking to him. She'd moved into her friend's house, refusing to come home until he stopped with this crazy stuff. His own daughter thought he was losing his mind, but he wasn't crazy. Diana was alive. Send me the photos, Robert said. His phone buzzed a moment later. He opened the message and there she was. Not blurry this time, not hidden in the background. Diana, clear as day, standing outside a small building with peeling paint. She was thinner than he remembered, her hair shorter and streaked with gray. She wore simple clothes, jeans, and a faded t-shirt, and was talking to an elderly woman while holding a medical bag. But it was her. The way she tilted her head when she listened. The slight slouch of her left shoulder from an old injury. The delicate hands that had held him, held their daughter, saved countless lives. Robert's vision blurred with tears. I need to go there, he said. Today, right now. I already booked you on a flight, Jackson replied. Leave SeaTac in 4 hours. Private jet to Kilimanjaro, then a small plane to Mwanza. I'm coming with you along with Tony and another security guy. We'll be wheels up by 2. What about Claire? There was a pause. That's your call, Robert. But I'd suggest you talk to her first. Show her these photos. If we're right about everything. If Diana's been hiding because she thought you and Claire were in danger, then Diana needs to know her daughter is safe. And Claire needs to decide if she wants to be there when you find her mother. Robert looked at the photo again. Diana was smiling in it, a small, tired smile, but real. He wondered what she thought about when she was alone. Did she think about them? Did she miss Claire's laugh? The way she used to curl up on the couch between them during movie nights? I'll talk to Claire, Robert said. But Jackson, if she doesn't want to come, I'm going anyway. I've waited 3 years. I can't wait another day. 2 hours later, Robert was standing on the porch of Claire's friend's house. He'd texted her that he was coming, that he had something important to show her. She'd responded with a simple fine, which wasn't exactly welcoming, but at least she'd agreed to see him. Ashley, Claire's friend, answered the door. She was a sweet kid, had been friends with Claire since middle school. Hi, Mr. Hayes, Claire's upstairs. She said you could go up. Robert climbed the stairs to the guest room where Claire had been staying. He knocked softly. Come in. Claire was sitting on the bed, her arms crossed, her face guarded. She looked so much like Diana when she was angry. Same set to her jaw, same fire in her eyes. I'm not here to fight, Robert said, staying near the door. I just want to show you something. If you look at it and still think I'm crazy, I'll leave you alone. I'll stop talking about this, okay? Claire didn't say anything, but she didn't tell him to leave either. Robert sat down in the chair across from the bed and pulled out his phone. The investigator I hired found her. He got photos. Real ones, not blurry ones. And Claire, it's her. It's your mom. He held out the phone. For a moment, Claire didn't move. Then slowly, she reached out and took it. Robert watched his daughter's face as she looked at the photo. He saw the exact moment she recognized Diana. Her eyes went wide, her mouth opened slightly, and all the color drained from her face. That's... Claire's voice broke. That's Mom. Yes, but how? Why? Claire looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Why would she leave us? Robert moved to sit beside her on the bed. We think she found evidence of something bad, something dangerous. And whoever was behind it threatened to hurt us if she didn't disappear. She faked her death to protect us, Claire. She did it because she loved us. Then why didn't she come back? It's been 3 years. Because the man who threatened her has only been dead for 8 months. And Diana doesn't know. She's still hiding from a threat that doesn't exist anymore. Claire stared at the photo, her hands shaking. Where is she? Tanzania, a small village near the Serengeti. She's working at a medical clinic. Robert paused. I'm flying there today. In about 2 hours. I'm going to bring her home. Claire looked at him, her eyes red and swollen. Can I come? Robert felt relief flood through him. Of course you can come. I was hoping you would. I'm scared, Dad. Claire's voice was small like when she was little and had nightmares. What if she doesn't want to see us? What if she's different now? Robert pulled his daughter into a hug. I'm scared too, but we have to try. We have to let her know she can come home. They landed in Mwanza 26 hours later, exhausted and anxious. The journey had been long, 2 flights, a layover, then a cramped ride in a small plane over terrain that made Claire grip her armrest so hard her knuckles turned white. Now they were in a jeep, driving down a dusty road lined with acacia trees. The landscape was beautiful in a stark way. Red earth, scattered villages, children playing in the dirt, women carrying water jugs on their heads. Jackson sat in the front seat talking to their local guide in Swahili. Tony and another security guard were in a second vehicle behind them. Robert and Claire sat in the back, neither of them speaking. What was there to say? The clinic is just ahead, Jackson said, turning around. But Robert, we need to be smart about this. We don't know Diana's mental state. She's been living in hiding for 3 years. Seeing you suddenly might be a shock. I understand. Maybe I should go in first, Jackson suggested. Prepare her. Let her know you're here. No. Robert's voice was firm. I need to see her. We've come all this way. I need to see my wife. The jeep pulled up in front of a small concrete building with a metal roof. There was a sign in Swahili that Robert couldn't read, but he assumed it said something about medical care. A few people sat outside on a bench waiting. Robert's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He looked at Claire, who had gone pale. You ready? He asked her. Claire nodded, but she didn't look ready. She looked terrified. They got out of the jeep. The heat hit Robert immediately, dry and intense, making the air shimmer. A few of the people waiting outside looked at them with curiosity. White Americans weren't exactly common here. Robert walked toward the entrance, Claire right behind him, her hand gripping his arm. Jackson followed at a distance, giving them space but staying alert. Inside, the clinic was simple but clean. White walls, tile floor, a reception desk where a young Tanzanian woman sat. She looked up as they entered and smiled. Habari, she said. Do you need doctor? Yes, Robert said. We're looking for Dr. Mitchell. Is she here? The woman's smile widened. Yes, Dr. Mitchell is with patient now. You wait, please. She gestured to some plastic chairs against the wall. Robert couldn't sit. He stood there, staring at the door leading to the back of the clinic, knowing Diana was somewhere on the other side. Claire stood next to him, practically vibrating with nervous energy. They waited 5 minutes. Then 10, then 15. Maybe we should come back, Claire whispered. Maybe this is a bad idea. Before Robert could respond, the door opened. And there she was. Diana walked through the door, her head down, looking at a clipboard in her hands. She was wearing scrubs now, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked older, tired, but unmistakably herself. Nima, did you restock the... Diana looked up. She saw Robert. Time stopped. The clipboard slipped from Diana's hands and clattered to the floor. Her face went white, then red, then white again. She grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. Robert, she breathed. It wasn't a question. It was barely a word. Hi, Diana. They stood there 15 feet apart, staring at each other. Robert saw 1,000 emotions flash across his wife's face. Shock, fear, joy, pain, confusion. Then Diana's eyes shifted to the person standing beside Robert. Claire? Diana's voice broke on their daughter's name. Claire made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. Mom? Diana's legs seemed to give out. She sank to her knees right there in the middle of the clinic, tears streaming down her face. Oh my God, you shouldn't be here. You can't be here. It's not safe. Robert moved forward quickly, kneeling in front of her. Diana, listen to me. It's okay. You're safe. We're safe. Vincent is dead. He's been dead for 8 months. The threat is gone. Diana shook her head frantically. No, you don't understand. Vincent wasn't alone. There were others. If they find out I'm alive, we'll deal with them, Robert said firmly. Together. But Diana, you don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to run. Diana looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. Her hand came up slowly, trembling, and touched his face like she was checking if he was real. I thought I'd never see you again, she whispered. I thought keeping you safe meant losing you forever. You didn't lose us, Robert said, his own voice shaking. We're right here. We're not going anywhere. A choked sob came from behind them. They both turned to see Claire standing there. tears pouring down her face, looking like the lost little girl she used to be when she had bad dreams. "Baby," Diana said, getting to her feet. "My baby girl." Claire didn't walk to her mother, she ran. She crashed into Diana so hard they both almost fell. And then they were holding each other, both of them crying, saying things that weren't quite words. Robert stood back, watching his wife and daughter reunite, and felt something break open in his chest. 3 years of grief, 3 years of emptiness, 3 years of pretending to be okay when he wasn't. All of it came flooding out. The receptionist Nima was crying too. So were the patients in the waiting room, who'd come to see what the commotion was about. Even Jackson, standing by the door, had to wipe his eyes. After a long moment, Diana pulled back slightly and looked at Claire. Really looked at her. "You're so tall," Diana said, laughing through her tears. "You're so grown up." "How did you get so grown up?" "I'm 16 now, Mom. I drive. I play varsity soccer. Claire's voice broke. "I needed you. I needed you so much. I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Diana pulled Claire close again, kissing the top of her head over and over. "I thought about you every single day. Every single day, baby." Robert moved closer and Diana's eyes found his again. There were so many things he wanted to say, so many questions he needed answers to. But all that could wait. "Can we go somewhere private?" he asked. "We have a lot to talk about." Diana nodded. She called out something in Swahili to Nima, who nodded and waved them on. Then Diana led them through the clinic to a small office in the back. It was barely bigger than a closet, just a desk, a chair, and a filing cabinet. But it had a door that closed. The three of them stood there in that tiny room, looking at each other like strangers who used to know everything about each other. "I don't even know where to start," Diana said finally. "Start with why," Robert said. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me to protect us?" Diana sank into the chair, suddenly looking exhausted. "Because Vincent had people watching you. The day I found those files, the proof of what they were doing, testing unapproved drugs on people who didn't know, falsifying safety data, Vincent knew within hours. He called me, and he told me exactly what would happen if I went to the authorities." He described Claire's schedule, her soccer practice, her friends' houses, the route you drove to work. He had photographs. Robert felt sick. "Why didn't you come to me?" "I tried." Diana's voice rose. "I tried to tell you that night, remember? I came to your office and Vincent was there. He was always there, and he looked me right in the eye and smiled, and I knew that if I told you, if you tried to fight him, he'd make good on his threats. So you left." "So I left," Diana agreed quietly. "The FBI said they could investigate, but it would take time. Maybe years, and they couldn't guarantee our safety. Vincent's connections went deep. Politicians, police, even some federal agents. The FBI agent I talked to said the best thing I could do was disappear, make Vincent think I was dead so he'd leave you and Claire alone." Claire was sitting on the floor now, her back against the wall, just listening. She looked shell-shocked. "The accident was staged," Diana continued. "The FBI helped me. They found someone who'd just died in a hospital, same age, same general build. They used that body. The Kenyan officials involved were paid off to make it all look real. I got on a boat to Tanzania with fake papers, and I've been running ever since." "For 3 years," Robert said. "You've been hiding for 3 years." "I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't risk contacting you. I couldn't risk Vincent finding out I was alive. And then—" Diana's voice dropped to a whisper. "And then time just kept passing. And I thought maybe you'd moved on. Maybe you and Claire were better off without me." "Better off?" Claire's voice was sharp. "Mom, I cried every night for 6 months. I failed half my classes that year. I thought you were dead. I know, and I'm sorry. A sorry isn't enough." Claire stood up, her hands clenched into fists. "You chose to leave us. You decided we were better off thinking you were dead than knowing the truth. I was trying to protect you." "By breaking our hearts?" Claire's voice cracked. "Dad was a zombie for 2 years. He barely ate. He barely slept. And I had to be strong for him because he was falling apart. We both were falling apart. And you were just here, living your life, seeing patients, probably not even thinking about us." "That's not true," Diana said desperately. "I thought about you every second of every day. You and your father are the only things that kept me going." "Then you should have come home," Claire shouted. "You should have trusted us to fight with you instead of running away." The room fell silent. Diana sat there, tears streaming down her face, looking at her daughter like her heart was being ripped out. Robert stood between them, feeling the weight of 3 years of pain and anger and love all crashing together. "Claire," he said softly, "this isn't the time." "When is the time, Dad?" Claire turned to him. "When is it okay to be angry that our whole lives were a lie? That Mom let us suffer for 3 years when she could have just told us the truth?" Robert didn't have an answer for that. Diana stood up slowly. She looked small and fragile in a way Robert had never seen before. "You're right to be angry," she said to Claire. "You have every right to hate me. What I did was unforgivable. But Claire, I need you to understand something. If Vincent had hurt you, if something had happened to you because of me, I couldn't have lived with that. I would rather die 1,000 times than see you hurt. But we were hurt," Claire said, her voice breaking. "We were hurt anyway. You just weren't there to see it." Diana nodded, more tears falling. "I know, I made the wrong choice. I see that now. I should have trusted your father. I should have trusted our family to be strong enough to face this together. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Robert moved to put a hand on Claire's shoulder. His daughter was shaking, caught between rage and relief, between wanting to hug her mother and wanting to run away. "We can't solve 3 years of pain in one afternoon," Robert said quietly. "But we're together now. That's what matters. We're together, and we can start figuring out how to move forward." Claire looked at him, then at Diana, then back at him. "I need some air," she said finally. She walked out of the office without looking back. Robert started to follow, but Diana caught his arm. "Let her go. She needs time." "Don't tell me how to parent our daughter," Robert said more sharply than he intended. "You haven't been here." The words hung in the air between them. Diana flinched like he'd slapped her. "You're right," she said softly, letting go of his arm. "I haven't been here, and I don't know if I can ever make that right." Robert closed his eyes, trying to control his emotions. He wasn't angry. Or maybe he was. He didn't even know anymore. All he knew was that his wife was alive, standing in front of him, and he didn't know how to feel about that. "We should get you out of here," he said finally. "It's not safe to stay." "If someone finds out, where would I go?" "Home. You're coming home," Diana shook her head. "Robert, I can't just come home. I'm legally dead. And what about the people involved in what Vincent was doing? They're still out there. Coming back puts you all in danger again." "Then we'll deal with it together," Robert said firmly. "No more running. No more hiding. We face whatever comes as a family. That's what we should have done 3 years ago." Diana looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, let's go home." The flight back to Seattle felt longer than the flight there. Diana sat by the window staring out at the clouds, barely speaking. Claire had chosen a seat 3 rows back, putting physical distance between herself and her mother. Robert sat between them literally and figuratively, trying to hold together a family that felt like it was held together with tape and hope. Jackson spent most of the flight on his laptop, digging deeper into Vincent's connections and the pharmaceutical company he'd been involved with. Every hour or so, he'd come back to Robert with updates, his face growing more serious each time. "We've got a problem," Jackson said quietly, sliding into the seat next to Robert while Diana dozed. Global Solutions didn't die with Vincent. The company's still operating, and there are 3 board members who were there when the illegal trials happened. If they find out Diana's alive, they might see her as a threat. Can't we just go to the FBI? Give them what we know? The FBI already investigated Global 2 years ago. The case fell apart due to lack of evidence. Without hard proof of the illegal trials, it's just Diana's word against theirs. And these are powerful people with expensive lawyers. Robert looked over at his wife, sleeping fitfully against the window. "So what do? We need to find the evidence Diana saw 3 years ago. The files she discovered that made Vincent threaten her. If we can locate those files, we can build a case. Until then, we keep Diana's return quiet. Very quiet. She can't just hide forever, Jackson. I know. But until we neutralize the threat, we need to be careful." Jackson glanced toward the back of the plane where Claire sat with her headphones on, tears running down her face. "And you need to focus on your family. They need you right now." When they landed at SeaTac, it was early morning. The city was just waking up, the sky turning from black to gray. Robert had arranged for them to go straight to a safe house rather than their home, a condo downtown that he owned but rarely used. Jackson insisted it was necessary until they figured out who might be watching. Diana stepped off the plane and breathed in the Seattle air. Robert watched her face, saw the complicated emotions playing across it: relief, fear, nostalgia, regret. "I never thought I'd see this place again," she said softly.